Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm DJ Ross. I'm in Mountain View, California.
Each week on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. On this week's show, we're playing Resident Evil 4, Bayonetta Origins, and Wildfrost.
It's been a while since we did one of these. I was just gonna go, hey, and then I realized I had to say something afterwards. So, how does this work?
We need like the 10-minute long, or 10-hour, is that what they do on
the 10-hour version?
10-hour long, yeah, where I turn it over to you and you go, hey, and it just goes for 10 hours, yeah.
You'd be like, well, I was waiting for you to, cut me off.
We'll do a mega mix of that with the Sax Man for 10 hours.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I think we got one of those ready to go.
Yeah. Quality content. That's what our patrons deserve.
It is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Really appreciate all you hanging out on the Patreon still, since we still have not formally launched that. But it's great. Thank you all so much for your support.
There's people who send us wads of cash in the mail.
Yeah. That's how they did it back before Patreon existed.
Yep.
Let's get the envelope full of cash in the mailbox. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
You meet a guy in a shady alley. Yep. Anyway,
here you go for the Patreon. You're like, what? What's Patreon?
It's 1983. I don't know what that means.
Oh.
Anyway, how's it going? I feel like it's been a little while. We took a little time off.
Yeah.
There was some travel. There was some sickness.
Kind of a weird recording schedule for the last month or so.
Yeah. So we appreciate anyone who is still hanging out, waiting for us to do this thing. And we're back. We're mostly healthy. We are no longer traveling and ready to talk about video games.
Yeah. It's been a while since I played some video games.
Yeah. But first, let's talk about movies.
Oh, no.
I didn't see Mario. Did you see Mario yet?
No. I did not see it. So
let's talk about movies we haven't seen.
I was like, this is going to be a good segment. What else?
Citizen
what
Kane.
Else
no.
Haven't we seen? Have you seen Citizen Kane?
I did. I took a film class in college and we had to watch a bunch of old movies and that was one of them.
Oh, what did you think of Citizen Kane?
It was fine.
It was fine.
I don't know if I thought it was
most highly regarded film ever made. It was all right.
I mean, it's no Mario Brothers, but you know. Yeah. I was 19 when I saw it. I don't know that I had like a world of experience to be able to appreciate it. I'm not sure if I watched it now in my 40s if I would have a better appreciation for Orson Welles.
Yeah, I kind of the same history with it. I think I watched it in high school as part of some class. I was like, I feel like I'm not getting it. Even at the time, I was just like, we're going to come back to this in 20 years and we'll see how it holds up.
Best movie of all time, huh? I don't know.
Yeah. It's like, I already knew the endings. I don't know how much that kind of dampened the experience.
Yeah. I think at that point in my life, like indie cinema was just kind of going through a thing. So, there was the not Resident Evil, Reservoir Dogs, and all of that other stuff going on where I was sort of like, maybe that's the best movie of all time. Maybe Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs?
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Certainly did not have the, the discerning palate to be able to appreciate a Citizen Kane at the time.
Sure.
Yeah. But no, I want to see Mario. I'm eager to see Mario. It seems to be pretty well regarded. You can't go anywhere on the internet lately without seeing people who are very enthusiastic about it or clips of Jack Black hamming it up as Bowser. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to sit in a theater with a bunch of screaming children to watch it. So I'm going to wait a little bit.
No, it's definitely like, I don't know what movie would get me into a theater these days. I really wish it was on, when they used to, like during lockdown, they would put out movies on whatever digital service and you could just buy them or rent them for a few days. Like I would totally do that. I would probably pay more than, typical ticket price to see the Mario movie that way. But since they're not doing that, I'll just wait it out.
It'll come quickly. It won't be long. I'm sure it'll be streaming before we know it. So
yeah. It's, like I said, not super urgent. Yeah.
It's been huge, though. It's the biggest animated movie opening of all time. It's already the biggest movie of 2023. So it's definitely quite the phenomena.
My question is it going to be better than the Sonic movies?
I can't vote on that. You like those, right? You were a fan of those?
Yeah, I thought they were pretty good.
Yeah,
It occurred to me, I was like, oh, there's a real chance that the Sonic movies may just be better than the Mario movie, despite all the the months of hype we've had to endure for this.
Am I accurate in saying that Sonic is the most like successful video game movie of all time? Did we learn that recently?
Well, I think it depends on how you're measuring it. Although, I think the last time we went through this, it was I think it was Sonic that was
back when
I
saw Uncharted and was salty about it.
Oh no, maybe it was Uncharted, right?
Yeah,
but I feel like that's just because those are the most recent, and people are just into like dumb schlock these days.
Recency bias, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've not done the math on the Mario versus Sonic thing. Once again, Sega. Always the runner-up, always the bridesmaid, never quite the bride.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the Mario movies completely destroyed it, just like box office numbers wise. But in terms of it being a good movie that I would like to go see, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I need to see those Sonic movies as much as I do like anything with Jim Carrey just kind of hamming it up. It's real tough to make me want to watch.
That's the reason to see those movies. I mean, it's not like I'm lining up to see Sonic 3. But I was like, I had a good time watching the Sonic movies. I don't know if I would ever pull one out of the, off the shelf. Be like, oh, time to watch Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Time for a movie night.
But I feel like that would be more likely to happen than if the Super Mario Brothers movie was on randomly. I don't know. Again, haven't seen it. I have no idea. Like, I shouldn't even be talking about it. We'll see how it shakes out whenever it ends up on streaming.
Okay. I mean, clearly a lot of folks have seen the Mario movie so far and seem to be having a good time with it. So, I remain optimistic.
Yeah, me too.
I did get to see recently, and I'm not sure if this is on your radar at all, but they made a movie about Tetris.
Oh, geez, no, this looks terrible.
No, I thought it was a lot of fun. I had a good time with it. So, I think it's just called Tetris. Not Tetris the motion picture or anything like that, just Tetris. And it's streaming on Apple Plus. And it is kind of a lightly fictionalized version of the pursuit of the license to put Tetris on the Game Boy back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. I thought it was enjoyable. I thought it was really fun. It really is 2 hours of contract negotiations. And to a degree, you have to find that interesting. There are people from Nintendo that are, kind of characters in it. And the two main characters are, I believe his name is Hank Rogers. And of course, Alexei Pajitnov is the creator, inventor of Tetris. They're kind of the two centerpiece figures in this thing. But it's a lot of Cold War espionage, Iron Curtain, USSR versus USA in the 80s kind of thing. And I thought everybody in it was really into it and seemed to be having a good time with it, and kind of thought it was kind of an interesting story.
I wasn't blown away by the trailer. It felt like they really set out to make a noisy trailer.
to make something that is probably inherently very dull seem somewhat exciting.
Yeah, well, it felt to me they were like, oh, what do you think a movie about Tetris is going to be like? Probably not like this. And then they just made this trailer that was like, oh, look, there's a car chase. It's like, I don't know if there was a car chase while they were trying to get Tetris on the Game Boy. Was there? Or was that one of the sort of liberties they took with the story?
There's a little documentary I watched on I believe it was on IGN afterwards, that with the real characters of Hank and I guess not characters, the real people, Hank and Alexei.
The real people, yeah.
Who, 30, 40 years later, who are still buddies and still collaborate, apparently, and own the Tetris company together, which owns all of the rights to Tetris. So Alexei finally cashed in. They said that, it certainly didn't happen that way. There was not like, a Born Identity style race to the airport. But they say it felt like that, that the spirit of the thing was you felt like you were doing something kind of dangerous and kind of covert. They were, I think, producers and story consultants on the movie. So they're in the credits and they take some of the blame for where the story went to a degree. So, I like anything that was like based on a true story, take elements of it with a grain of salt. But as a piece of, video game, tangentially related video game entertainment, I had a good time with it. And it's included with my Apple Plus membership, so I got to watch it kind of for free.
I know you love that Apple Plus.
I've had a good time with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been kind of on my list to see, despite not being like super blown away by the trailer, just because like it's kind of a fun twist that they like. This is the direction they went with it. For the longest time, I was afraid that it was just going to end up being like Adam Sandler is the Tetris piece or whatever, or like the Battleship movie they made. It was just going to be like
what
this
was the one he did?
disaster.
Adam Sandler did with Pac-Man in it. And, Pixels, isn't that a thing? Was that?
Yeah.
A thing
So I was thinking like, it's just going to be like, is that what they're using the Tetris license for? But this seems a little more inspired. So that at least I'm glad about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's worth a watch. It's a good 2-hour thing. It's a popcorn movie. Sarah's not a big gamer, but she likes Tetris. She's a fan of Tetris and has played most of the versions of it that I've brought into the house. And she thought it was entertaining as well. We had a good time watching it. So, I would recommend it as long as you go into it understanding, it's a fictionalized piece of what the real story probably was. Yeah. And Taron Egerton is the lead. I like him. He's been all the Kingsman movies. And he was Elton John in the Elton John movie, The Rocket Man. He's a fine young actor. I thought he did a good job with it. So, yeah, it was good. It was entertaining.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, Citizen Kane.
Yeah, it's not Super Mario Brothers movie.
It's not Reservoir Dogs, but not many things are.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll watch it this weekend. Who knows?
Yeah. Would recommend. It did make me want to play Tetris, though.
Oh, yeah.
Very much so.
Playing Tetris.
they in the movie, not to spoil anything, this isn't the first 15 minutes. Hank describes sort of playing it for the first time at an electronics conference in the early 80s. And he's like, and I went to bed that night and I closed my eyes and all I could see was falling blocks. And I'm like, that's the thing, man. That's how it gets you. And I very much am susceptible to the Tetris effect. So yeah, I get it. Absolutely. It gets into your head.
What's the next big video game movie coming out that we haven't seen?
I don't know. Is there another Tetris one? No, not another Tetris movie, another video game movie. I'm not sure what else is on the horizon.
I was talking about Sonic 3, just joking, but I don't even know if they're making another one. I assume that it must be slated at some point.
It seems inevitable, right?
Yeah. I know they already talked about doing a Mario sequel, but I'm sure that's a ways off.
Yeah. I mean, they have all those Mario games they have to make movies of.
Oh, geez. I've heard, I've avoided clicking on some very tantalizing, reviews of the Mario movie and sort of, people hypothesizing about what could be next or, how the Mario movie could sort of trickle back to the games. But, man, I really want to go into it sort of unspoiled, so I will have to reserve my thoughts on those for now.
One of the things that I read that I think is really interesting is that, obviously, the Mario movie was done with the full participation of Nintendo. And apparently you get a sort of a slice of Mario and Luigi's life as plumbers before the big Mushroom Kingdom adventure in the movie. And you meet other characters in their family. And that apparently was based on kind of original game design that they had done back in the 80s and never actually put into a video game. So, again, which is really cool that, they were able to kind of trace it back to the source and, ask the people who brought Mario into the world, hey, did he ever have a family? And what would it look like? And to a degree, they were able to kind of sketch it out in the movie. So, again, I've not seen it. I'm not sure to what degree that gets explored at all, but I read a little article about that over the weekend and I was like, oh, neat. This is unreleased Mario footage in a lot of ways. Or at least unrealized Mario inspiration.
That's cool. I did not really realize that. Yeah. The one thing I have had spoiled for me, I'm not going to say what it is kind of related to that. And as much as I was disappointed that I had this thing spoiled, I was also delighted. So,
interesting.
Looking forward to whatever that involves in the movie. Sorry, that was a completely unhelpful anecdote, just completely free of identifying details.
Well, that's good. I mean, we don't participate in spoilers here, so good.
Yeah.
I will say that as I've done a little Googling here while we're talking, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3 already has a release date, December 20th, 2024.
2024. Well, that's a long time for me to be waiting outside the movie theater.
At least clear your schedule for Christmas week next year.
All right.
Yeah. They're making that Borderlands movie. The Borderlands movie is supposed to be this year, I believe.
Along with like Kate Blanchett.
Kate Blanchett, yeah.
Weird.
And Jack Black. Isn't Jack Black the robot? Claptrap?
Is he? It's fine. Jack Black can do whatever he wants. Like, I don't know if I need to see the Borderlands movie at this point.
I'm not sure. It's Eli Roth, who is kind of one of my favorite horror directors, so that's a weird
definitely
flex.
Don't need to see the Eli Roth directed Borderlands movie.
It's just 2 hours of torture porn. That's just
it's like, wow, that was a real pivot for this series.
Didn't see that coming at all. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure. The rest of this list, I'm looking at a list of upcoming video game movies, and I don't need to see most of this. So it's a lot of BioShock, Death Stranding movie. Who wants that?
It's going to be like 12 hours long.
Yeah. Metal Gear Solid movie. I know that Oscar Isaac is in that, right?
I'd see that, maybe.
That's in the works. They are making a movie out of Firewatch, which seems kind of unnecessary because the video game was already kind of a movie. I don't know. Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, good for the Firewatch guys. They got a movie deal out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And still have not made another video game since then.
Well, yeah.
They've been able to parlay that into making a video game console because they made the play date. And then now a movie, apparently, and never had to make a Firewatch sequel.
Yeah. Well, you know what happened to those guys, right?
Maybe I don't.
Oh, they all just got... Well, I think the whole studio just got absorbed into Valve.
Oh, really? Okay.
So now they work on various pieces of, like, Half-Life Alyx and other Valve projects. But, yeah, that game's never coming out.
Maybe for the better.
No, I want to play... I'm never going to play Half-Life Alyx. I want to play another game. Like, whatever.
Speaking of games, what have you played? What games are you playing? Real games, not video game movies.
What are real games?
Actual video games have you put your hands on recently?
I have been playing a ton of Resident Evil 4, it turns out. And I know that was a situation when we last recorded a show.
that was the demo for the remake, right?
Yeah, well, I was also playing the original Resident Evil 4, but now I'm playing the new one. So, just back-to-back Resident Evil 4.
All Resident Evil 4 all the time.
Yeah, my, my ideal reality. Where I left off on the demo, I was, like, not super enthused with it. I was just really curious how it's going to translate into sort of this more modern format.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, after spending, I don't even know how much time I spent on this so far, I'm fairly far into it. I feel like I'm about 2/3 of the way through. But it turned out real good, I feel like, despite, so I think I remember the sort of misgivings I had with the demo is it just felt a little floaty and didn't control
that sounds familiar.
quite
yes,
as well.
You're saying that. Yeah.
Especially having come directly from the original version, so it was very easy to make this comparison. That is still present, like it still feels a little sort of mechanically inconsistent, but for the most part, like everything else in the game feels like they have just done a surprisingly good job of bringing Resident Evil 4, like dragging Resident Evil 4 into 2023 for a 2023 audience. It's surprisingly faithful to the original in terms of like the structure of the game. Like all the story beats so far have been very familiar. They have all the same, or like mostly the same sort of boss encounters, and like all the memorable moments are back in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of been the most surprising part to me, is I thought they would be changing up more of it, or like taking more liberties with it. And I'm not saying like the fact that they didn't do as much as I was expecting is a bad thing, because it really does just feel like they took this game that is pretty old at this point and just sort of translated it into this new version while preserving most of what made Resident Evil 4 Resident Evil 4.
That's kind of a weird, I mean, I guess a weird place to be in that. Obviously, you wouldn't want it to be monkeyed with too dramatically, right? But
yeah,
what then is the argument for Resident Evil 4 Remake? Because it's not like this is a game that was hard to find or was inaccessible or was lost to time.
Yeah,
it's
still
just pretty available.
It's like a fresh coat of paint on it, which, it's hard to argue that Resident Evil 4 as we discussed, I think, a couple weeks ago, it's aged pretty well, even in terms of the visuals, but certainly doesn't hurt having this, next gen, or I guess current gen at this point, coat of paint over the entire thing. It's like a modern control scheme, new voice acting, all this stuff. And it's not like they've made no changes to it. They have added a bunch of new sort of like gameplay systems. They've added, or they made a few little tweaks that feel like they are in there just to to mess with veterans' expectations. Like a few little details that I won't give away.
Like story details?
Not really story details, but
you don't want to give it away. So yeah.
Yeah, like if you played Resident Evil 4, like the original one, and you're very familiar with it, there are definitely, you come on points in the game where you're like, okay, now this thing is going to happen, and then either something else happens or it doesn't happen quite the same way. And it's just kind of a fun little, feels like a kind of a nod from the developers being like, yeah, we still got some little surprises up our sleeves.
Yeah, cool.
So I've been really having a good time with it, which is a little surprising because I thought, the way that Leon controlled in the demo was a little disorienting.
And it feels better in the full game?
I don't know if it feels better. I think I'm just used to it at this point.
You just resigned yourself to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny, like for the first few hours, I was using that classic 2005 control option, which is like, I think it puts run on the X button. Because I was having such a hard time relearning or like trying to undo the muscle memory of the original Resident Evil 4. Because like it's so ingrained, like you like shoot a zombie in the face, they stagger, and then you sprint up to them and do a roundhouse kick, and then like stab them a bunch of times with the knife while they're on the ground. And that is like, you just do that every 5 seconds in Resident Evil 4. And I could not bring myself to, I think they want like run is on the shoulder button in the default controls.
Gross.
Well, I mean, it's fine. It's a little more modern, I think. That's like how Monster Hunter works. But I just couldn't get over it. I couldn't reprogram myself. But eventually I just forced myself to because it just works better if you're able to run and like look around with the analog stick at the same time. So eventually I got used to it. I feel like the controls still not as good as the original. I think the original was just a better sort of like video gamey action game. But still, like the new one is completely playable. They did change something that's this is probably my biggest disappointment about it, is that your knife can actually break in this.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, the first time this happened, I didn't even realize that there was something I should be worried about. But because I've just been trying to play it like I would play the original Resident Evil 4, I'd like shoot a zombie, run up and try and stab him a bunch of times while they're stunned. And if you do that too much in this, or you can also use the knife to sort of like get yourself out of a jam. If like if you get grabbed, you could just stab a zombie in the neck and they'll release you. But if you do that too often, or you just like, take too many swipes at them, it'll just break. And you don't have your knife anymore. You have to either repair it, or you can find these flimsy little like temporary knives as you're making your way through the different environments. But the first time this happened, I was so upset because on some level, I feel like the knife is Resident Evil 4. Like in the original, sure, you had tons of ammo compared to previous Resident Evil games, but the real pro move was to just use the knife as much as possible, because then you just have even more ammo. And really, a lot of the time, like if you were good at positioning and sort of planning the way battles played out, you could get away with like just taking out zombies using this knife the whole time. And the knife was unlimited in the original version. I think it's actually a holdover from Resident Evil 2 and 3, the recent remakes of those, because you would have a similar sort of like zombie escape move you could do with the knife. I didn't play those, so I don't know exactly how it works. But it just felt like, the knife would break in those two games. So, of course, it's going to behave the same way in Resident Evil 4 Remake. Feels less great that it breaks in this one because it was such an important tool in the original one. But I think, like, as I've gotten farther into the game, it's become less of an issue. I have to say, man, the earlier hours in this game feel so difficult. But I think a lot of that is because my memories of Resident Evil 4 are like my most recent playthroughs of it, where it would be like New Game Plus, and I would have all my like crazy equipment from previous playthroughs, and it's all upgraded. And Leon is just Rambo at that point. So I was like, yeah, just, mowing down zombies, and, nothing can even touch me because I'm just like so proficient at this game at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start up the remake, you're starting from scratch. And I also think it's just balanced to be a little more difficult than the original. So you're really like having to maximize your resources, whether that's ammo or like your health items or even the knife now. And I was just thinking, like, man, I can't wait till it gets to the point that I remember from the original games where I'm just loaded. But the whole time I'm thinking, like, man, what if it just never gets to that point? What if they did it? What if they really sort of scaled back the action like some people have been requesting and turned this into more of a horror game or more of a survival game, I guess?
Would you describe the original Resident Evil 4 as difficult? Is it a tough game?
I think it was slightly on the difficult side. It had kind of the same pace where it started out and you're really kind of strapped for resources. But, by the end of it, depending on how well you've been playing, you could potentially just be sitting on a pile of bullets and healing herbs and all that stuff. And I can't tell if it does actually feel a little bit harder, this one. But it's also, a lot of that is just because it's like a new experience. I don't have any of the resources. I don't really know sort of what to expect from the difficulty curve, or if they'll be handing out more resources more regularly later on. So I've just been trying to play very conservatively. But it occurred to me, like, that's really what I love about Resident Evil 4, is that it's definitely more action heavy than the previous Resident Evils, but you still really have to think about how you're spending your resources, because you can't just, like, go crazy. It's not like you have a machine gun and can start mowing down zombies.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's doing this, like, procedurally or not. Like, if it realizes that I have more ammo than I'm intended to at a certain point and, like, stops handing out ammo as drops or, like, healing items, and if it's, like, trying to balance between what I have in my inventory. But it really feels like somehow I just have exactly enough resources to get through every encounter. Like, I've gotten through some boss battles where I'm down to like no more healing items, and my knife is broken, and I've got like 4 more bullets or something like that. And I just think, wow, I almost didn't make it through that. Or I don't know what you would even do if you run out of this and your knife is broken, because usually you could just fall back on the knife. So I don't know if it's if it's smart about doing that, or if it's just worked out. So they have designed, or they have placed the exact amount of resources you need in your path as you're making it through this game. But that aspect of it has been really incredible.
That's cool. I mean, there is something very kind of exhilarating about those close call successes in a video game, right? And if somehow the manufacturers of Resident Evil 4 have been able to sort of divine that into something that sort of auto balances on the back half, where you feel like, oh, you narrowly escaped all of these horrible scrapes, then yeah, that's pretty brilliant. There's certainly moments you were talking about weapon durability, and I was thinking of Zelda, of course, the Breath of the Wild being kind of the icon of that, the modern icon of that. And I think they do that really well in Breath of the Wild as well, where there's a lot of things that happen in that game that feel like, oh man, I was just a hair away from not being able to be successful, scale that mountain, et cetera, and somehow you were just able to eke out a success. And I do love that rush in a video game when they sort of get that, whatever that magical balance is, exactly right, that allows you to be successful by the skin of your teeth. Yeah.
It's real interesting figuring out just how much sort of adversity you're willing to put up with. Because I feel like I want to get to that point where I just have unlimited ammunition. But it's just so satisfying to get through an encounter knowing that you're going into it like feeling very unprepared, and the fact that you were able to just be smart about it and really use the right actions at the right points it just makes me feel like a genius afterward. When you start it up, actually, so it gives you a bunch of difficulty options. The quote-unquote normal difficulty, I forgot, it may just be called normal. It says, this is for people who have never played Resident Evil 4 before. And then it said, like, basically suggests if you played the original to bump it up to, like, hardcore mode. And I was like, I'm not playing this on hardcore mode the first time. I'm just going to play it on normal and see how that is. But there's also this, I think it's called assisted difficulty, which is basically the easy mode. And it gives you, a bunch of different sort of, like, advantages. And there were definitely times early on, especially when I was just still reeling from realizing that the knife can break. I was just like really not feeling it. I thought, man, maybe I should just put it on easy mode. Then I'll get all my bullets probably. And, maybe I just want to like run through this game and not be stressed out about it. But then I was like, no, I'm just going to play it on normal mode because I don't know. I don't have anything to prove to this game, but I don't want to just immediately drop it down to easy. But it's been really good. It's been like somehow I just enjoy sort of the fight that the game is putting up.
Yeah.
And I'm
that's a weird,
satisfied with myself.
Like chasm in terms of the way that I want to consume video games is that sometimes I think more difficult games for me are more fun to just put on easy mode and steamroll through. But then, sometimes there are games that sort of, there is a sort of certain joy in the narrow escape, I think, right? I'm going to talk about Wildfrost a little bit later, and it's a roguelike, or roguelite, however you want to sort of classify it. And that element of it still feels endlessly frustrating to me, that constantly resetting back to zero. So that is not the kind of the right kind of difficulty for me. But I do think I still like that, that I don't know, that weird sort of genius feeling of being able to just get by in something. What's the last game I played that felt like that? The Death's Door, where you're the little Grim Reaper crow, and every battle in that was me trying 50 times to be successful, and on the 51st just kind of eking it out by the skin of my teeth. And I felt like a bit of a genius every single time it happened, despite taking 51 attempts to do. There's some brilliant piece of balancing that happens in a game like that makes me feel like I want to stick with it. Whereas, Wildfrost, unfortunately, has kind of got me at a point where I'm like, I don't know if I want to play this whole thing because I just feel super beat up by it. I don't feel like I'm getting smarter, unfortunately.
Maybe it's just a matter of playing for a little longer. Who knows?
Yeah, I need a 50-second playthrough.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I forget what else I was going to say about Resident
Sorry,
Evil.
I completely stole your topic. I apologize.
No, I think it's funny that, on some level, I'm just like, why did I even play horror games in the first place? Because I don't like being terrified. But there's just something about like surviving a situation where you're like, oh, I did it. And it's like gives you the adrenaline or the dopamine or whatever to continue on.
Your spooky Saturday medley. How do you not like scary games?
I don't know if you tuned into any of the games I was playing on Spooky Saturday. Not especially scary. But that was sort of the trademark. Yeah.
There's a big jump between spooky and scary, right?
Yeah. I like to be very specific about how scary they're getting. But anyway, so I feel like in a lot of regards, it's not as good of a game as the original. Like, I don't think this will replace the original. There are a lot of cases, I think it just feels really inconsistent in places. Like, I will be shooting a zombie, and I'll feel like, oh, if this had been like the 2005 version, he definitely would have gotten staggered, and I would have been able to do my roundhouse combo and all that stuff. So it just feels like it's like the action itself is designed a little differently and in a way that's not quite as satisfying as the original. But I do think they've done an incredible job of just updating this. I think unless you're insane about the original, like I am, you'll have no issue getting into this. Like, it's completely playable, and it brings a lot of the best qualities of Resident Evil 4 into 2023.
Oh, cool. I guess that's my summary question for you, is that if this was, somebody's first experience with Resident Evil 4, would you recommend this, or would you recommend they go back and play the old one somewhere?
I do think the original is still very playable if you can get over the weird control scheme. But like this one, like for most people, I feel like you probably just play the remake. Like it's so hard to still hit all the correct notes. One thing that has been really surprising actually is So the premise of the game is you're looking for the president's daughter who has been kidnapped, which is just, yes, it's still, campy Resident Evil storylines. And in the original, she's just like kind of this annoying, kind of shrill damsel in distress character, and you spend a lot of the game sort of doing an escort mission and telling her to take cover behind stuff, and it's not the worst experience in the original. Like, I still love the original despite having these long escort sections.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, so that character, Ashley, is like a completely different person. She's not... I mean, it's still kind of irritating that she's just like a helpless sort of damsel in distress a lot of the time. But she just... Like, the actor who does her voice lines is such an improvement over the original. She's not quite as, like, shrieky as she yells after Leon that she's being like carried away by zombies or whatever. It's just such a breath of fresh air. So that was a huge surprise.
Nice. That's quite an upgrade.
Yeah. And this game is enormous. I forgot just how much ground you cover during the course of this game. I was thinking I might actually be wrapped up by the time we started recording this week, but I still have a few more chapters to go.
Cool. Well, good. Resident Evil 4, the gift that keeps on giving.
I gotta say, I've gone from the point of like, why would they remake Resident Evil 4 to just being like, oh, okay, they did it, I guess. They did a really good job, and I think it's gonna end up being one of my like sort of like gold standards for remakes. In fact, I find myself thinking a lot about the Final Fantasy VII remake. And where that ended up and sort of the decisions they made with how to approach that. I was like, oh man, I really wish they had taken more of the same approach that Capcom did with Resident Evil for that game.
In terms of being a little more kind of faithful to the core story.
Yeah, because I think like this is sort of what I imagine when you say, oh, we're remaking this game. Like, this is one of the best case results that you get. Final Fantasy VII, very inspired. They're doing something a little different than everybody expected, I think, which is interesting in its own right, but like that's not really what I wanted out of a remake of that game if they were going to go through the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like so far, this has been real good.
Cool. I mentioned Wildfrost earlier. I'll talk a little bit about that. I've only played the demo. The actual game comes out this week on Thursday, so by the time this episode comes out, the video game will be released. It is available on Switch. It's available on PC. The PC version is already Steam compatible, so that is a plus. Not Steam compatible, Steam Deck compatible.
It's like, okay, you got it.
Of course it's Steam compatible, but it will work on your Steam Deck if you have one. Is
that where you're playing this?
No, I'm playing it on the Switch. There's a demo that you can play on the Switch as well.
Yeah, okay.
It's a what did I call it before? It's a Slay the Spire like. It's a deck building roguelike. And that it deploys a few things that feel very similar to Slay the Spire and a few things that are clearly kind of its own design, which is cool. It's not entirely derivative of a Slay the Spire kind of experience, although that does sort of feel like the gold standard for me. And that you have this kind of cartoony aesthetic where you've got a lot of people kind of eking it out in a frozen kind of post-apocalyptic world. But they're all super cute. Everything is like cute and funny, and it has a real kind of like Adult Swim, maybe, kind of modern Saturday morning cartoony kind of vibe to it. It actually reminds me a lot of the animation from the game Grindstone that I played a little while ago. It has that almost exact same look. I'm not sure if there's some connection between the art directors on those. So you start every game with kind of picking your main character, your champion, your team leader, and you have a play field that is super snowy and a little frozen over, and you've got 6 spaces on there. You place your card down. The enemy teams come in as cards themselves from the left-hand side of the screen, and they take up half of those 6. 6 over 6. So you're playing kind of 2 lanes combat at the same time. Whereas in Slay the Spire, it was really just sort of you as the the big bad hero, I guess, trying to make your way through the game, taking on enemy and after enemy after enemy as they come your way. Here, you're doing a little bit more of a team management kind of thing, where you're trying to sort of put tank characters, tougher characters, characters with more armor in front of you, so they absorb more of the hits while you kind of attack and cast magic from behind. Because if you kill your leader, they die. And you have to start the whole thing over again. You lose your money, you lose your upgrades, you have maybe eked a tiny little bit of unlock progress on a home base village that gives you some perks as you move a little further into the game. But anything else that you've earned up to that point, including modifications for some of your cards and stuff like that, it's all gone. And you
wait,
really
who is your
back.
leader? Is that like one of your party members?
Yeah, it is. It's one of your. It's the first party member you pick, and you get a couple that are sort of like randomly created. You get a choice of 3. And they have, some little perks, some little disadvantages. Some are a little tougher than the others. So again, you kind of like start every run from a slightly different and a slightly fresher perspective. Everything in this is sort of goes back to a kind of snowy, frozen world kind of vibe. So you can throw snowballs at enemies and it slows them down. And while they're in sort of a frozen state, you can unleash kind of more attacks on them. If you get mushrooms, you can poison other players with them and stuff like that, and that does damage over time. So there's a bunch of like kind of cool little like, I don't know, in-gamey RPG like kind of modifiers that happen. You can get little chimes that you put on some of your cards, and it gives them additional modifiers. So every time you do snowball damage to an enemy, it will give everybody on your team like +1 armor. Or will increase the attack of something. And fire is a real big deal because everything's frozen. So if you have access to fire at any point, it does huge damage. So when you find fire cards, those are a big deal. So you're doing a lot of like kind of elemental attacks. You're trying to manage a couple lines of battle at the same time. You're trying to keep that leader alive no matter what you do, by going through wave after wave of attacks and support cards and things like that. Little different kind of modifiers and nerfs that you can do. It's cool. It's a lot. The demo is pretty good at sort of layering some of that stuff on, but at some point they stop kind of walking you through it and just kind of put their hands up and push it in, and you die a lot. I died a lot before I had a sense of even what I was supposed to be doing. I've gotten much further into the demo at this point. Still have not seen the end of the demo, which is a pretty good cost proposition for a video game demo. It's quite a bit of gameplay, and I'm just sort of feeling like I kind of understand what I should be doing. There's a countdown on your enemies' cards that ticks down for every move you make. And as they get closer to 0, they're going to unleash all of their attacks. So you have to do a lot of prep, right? You have to do your modifications. You have to move people around the playing field. The cool thing about this is you can reshuffle your deck at any time. And draw 5 new cards. That counts as one of your moves, though, and will cause all of your enemy cards to tick down 1 closer to being able to attack. So you're using kind of that pre-attack time, essentially, of 3 or 4 moves to be able to, like, blockade yourself. Surround yourself by cohorts, people who will defend you. Surround yourself by, you have a pet. At some point, you can adopt a dog, and they will do attacks for you and stuff like that too. It gets real sad when the dog card dies. One thing I learned in a recent playthrough is that you can, any card that is hurting, you can take off the playfield and put in your pocket, and they will heal up for a little bit while they're in your pocket.
Ooh.
Didn't know this the first 15 times I died. So I had a couple of really good cards that I felt really bad about killing off. And because it's a roguelike, they're gone forever. Until I learned, well, I can use one of my moves to kind of put them in cooldown. And they'll heal up, and they'll end up getting reshuffled back into your deck eventually. So I wasn't using the reshuffle as strategically as I should. Again, I was thinking like Slay the Spire and many of the other collectible card games like Inscription that I've played, where every time you shuffle, the enemy takes their turn. And I'm like, that's not this game. That's a whole different thing. So it's cool. It's got a lot of like little bells and whistles. The artwork is beautiful. The music is really good. The soundtrack comes out this week as well. I kind of want to check that out. I'm still kind of figuring it out though. It feels really punishing. And I'm not sure if it's just because I don't quite get it yet, or if this is a game that's going to make me really angry a lot.
Might just be on the more difficult end of the spectrum.
Yeah, it might be sort of specifically tuned for a player who is, I don't know, maybe going for like a Souls-like collectible card game kind of experience. Not generally how I consume video games. But Wildfrost kind of got me there by being kind of cool looking and maybe having kind of a different, more of a battalion approach to kind of a Slay the Spire experience where you're managing a team rather than just one, like, tank of a player. Mm-hmm. But it just feels like a lot after spending quite some time with the demo.
How would you rate Slay the Spire in terms of, or like compared to other games you play? Is it like generally more difficult?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This one is yet more difficult than.
Yeah, because like Slay the Spire, and it's so hard to sort of like go back to kind of the first couple times I played Slay the Spire because it too is a game that is quite dense and does require over time that you die a lot, and through the course of that, like learn what some of the cards do, learn the advantages of picking one of the main characters over another one, trying to find one that sort of suits your play style and how you want to like be successful. So there's a lot of experimentation that goes into Slay the Spire that maybe I'm not doing with Wildfrost, and I'm just sort of expecting like I'm going to get it the first couple times I play it, and I'm not so far. So there's little chirons that appear on some of the cards, and I'm like, what does that even mean? What is that? Why did that number change? I have no idea what that number means. Like, I didn't get the snowball thing the first couple of times. I didn't understand why I was throwing snowballs at people, and it was meant to slow them down. It buys you time to do more stuff. I just wasn't using it right. So again, while the demo I think is pretty good, there's still stuff where it's just sort of like a wall of text, and I'm just like, okay, well, I'll figure it out. And maybe I just need to be a little more methodical, a little more thoughtful, and maybe a little more patient, and realize that I need to die a lot more before I get to a point where I really fully understand what I should be doing in a playthrough of Wildfrost.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that's the case. It sounds very plausible.
Yeah. So, I don't know if I'm going to go for the full game. Maybe we'll try the demo a little bit more and see if, after sort of like throwing myself at it a few more times, if it starts to click in the way that Slay the Spire eventually did. And not every game has to be Slay the Spire. That's probably not a fair comparison, obviously, for Wildfrost, but that is my touchstone for games like this. And while I wouldn't want this to necessarily be an exact duplicate of a Slay the Spire experience, I do feel like there's something about the way that game is tuned that makes me feel less angry about dying and having to start back at the beginning. That Wildfrost has not yet sort of done. It feels like the progress between runs and Wildfrost is very, very incremental. You even lose all your money. Like, you're trying to sort of buy upgrades and get access to new cards and new weapons and stuff like that. And if you die, all of that is gone. You really go back to zero in almost every way. And I'm like, okay, so it's very roguelike, right? It's permadeath across the board. You're not retaining anything from playthroughs, except the progress you make in upgrading your main series. Your main city, sorry.
In Slay the Spire, did anything carry over between playthroughs? Like, you would maybe have access to new cards you encountered or something like that, or maybe you could pick cards that would go in your deck from the beginning. But there wasn't a whole lot that, like, transferred. Like, you couldn't keep your resources or anything, right?
No, that's true. Yeah. And your money really only stayed through the duration of the playthrough that you had to. Yeah, I think a lot of the value in the repeat playthroughs in Slay the Spire was, again, you're learning what those cards are and what they mean and how to best use them.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just not there yet with Wildfrost.
You don't feel like you're learning anything every time you die?
No, because there's still moments in Wildfrost where, like, the counters will tick down, the enemies will do all of their turns, and I feel like I'm steeled up. I'm ready. I'm going to sort of survive the next deluge, and they just wipe every single one of my cards, and then finally wipe the leader, and it says dead on the screen, and I have to go back and start from zero, and I don't understand why.
Oh, well, that's not so great.
Yeah, that feels very frustrating. Like there are consequences to things that I'm doing in Wildfrost that I don't quite understand why it's happening. Why me? Why is this happening to me? And I think like if I had a play or a run of Slay the Spire that kind of went the same way, I would totally know what I did wrong. I would understand where I made the choice. Yeah. At this point in this battle, I should have done this thing. I should have chose X. Instead, I chose Y, and that was the bad choice, and that led me down the path of destruction.
That's one of my favorite things about that game is that you could basically see how the turn is going to play out before anything happens, and you're like, okay, so here are like 3 ways it could go. Which is the best of these 3 outcomes. But it, like everything, like you could see what the monster was going to do. You could like all the stats are right in front of you. It's really amazing that it was still like managed to be a game at all.
Yeah, it's really just a spreadsheet, right? Yeah. So I have hundreds of hours of Slay the Spire. I've played Wildfrost for maybe 90 minutes. So it's
okay, come on, come back in like 10 hours from now.
Sure, it's probably not fair to compare the two, but a demo is meant to entice you. A demo is meant to make you think, well, this is a game that I would buy full price, and I will eventually master it. And I've not felt that way with the Wildfrost demo.
I don't know how long it took me to really click with Slay the Spire, but I feel like it was more than 90 minutes.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean, at least you can just keep coming back to this, right?
Yeah, I don't think you're time locked or anything like that. I think there's like a little mini campaign that you can do that I've gotten close, I think, to the end of, but have not finished. And I think that's the end of the demo, but you can certainly restart, roll up another character, and go again.
Yeah, just give it some more time. I'm being optimistic.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to have another Slay the Spire in my pocket kind of experience where I felt like that was the good in between game. Like if I was between big releases or I was a little burnt out and whatever the main game is I was playing, let's play Slay the Spire for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Slay the Spire still exists. I could still do that with Slay the Spire.
Like, what's stopping you from just doing that now?
Yeah. But it'd be cool if there was a fresh one of those that I could tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I like the construct of a collectible card game. I think there's something very sort of satisfying about that, or a deck building game in video game form. That has kind of resonated with me over the last couple of years. I've played a lot of them. So, yeah, it's naive to think, obviously, that I'm gonna get it in the first 90 minutes, but I think I would hope to be a little more like into it. I know the first couple of plays of Slay the Spire, I was like, oh, I get what you're doing. I understand what the appeal of this is. Wildfrost has not quite presented itself that way yet.
Yeah. Well, I hope you give it a little more time. Maybe it'll turn itself around.
I want to finish this demo at least. I want to see credits roll on this thing. So, yeah.
Just credits roll on the demo.
On the demo, yeah.
Yeah.
The other game that I've been playing that I want to talk a little bit about is Bayonetta Origins. The subtitle of this is Cereza and the Lost Demon. This is kind of the weird origin story of Bayonetta. This is not a combo-based crazy action game like the Bayonetta games have been. This is a top-down, more exploration-based, not even a platformer, adventure game, I guess. You are a 10-year-old Bayonetta who is a young witch in school who has kind of flaky powers, kind of not the most seasoned and experienced witch yet. And I'm just only 10 years old. And
is this another witch game? You're just making potions?
It's another witch game. You are, in fact, making potions, correct?
Oh, unbelievable. I didn't even think about that when they announced this. I was like, they're just making a lot of flowers, witch game.
Doing some crafting.
That's kind of amazing, though.
You're trying to do something that is connected very directly to Bayonetta's history, to her parents. I think you get a little bit of the story in the main Bayonetta games. You get a lot more of it in Bayonetta Origins, of course. And
because that's what everybody wanted, just more to that Bayonetta plot.
Sure, give me the origin story. So in this, you are venturing out into the woods to do something related to your parents, and The only defense you have is your occasionally spotty witchy skills, which most recently involved you trying to summon a demon, which didn't go great. So you try to deploy that again, you summon a demon, and it's looking for a host body, and the only one it can find is your stuffed Cheshire Cat, your stuffed doll.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes your kind of familiar, that becomes your buddy throughout the rest of the game. You don't have enough power to be able to get the demon out of your doll back to where he wants to go. So that makes him the lost demon, I guess. You then go on this big exploration thing through the woods, gathering up resources, trying to connect the dots on some of these story beats. And you control from that point forward, more often than not, simultaneously, both characters. You control Cereza with the left stick, and you control the Lost Demon, Cheshire, with the right stick. Again, more often than not, simultaneously. So you're walking with the two of them side by side. You're sometimes trying to solve puzzles with the two of them in two separate locations, trying to trigger two things at the same time. Simultaneously, you're controlling two characters with two sticks, shoulder buttons and all, or sometimes getting engaged in combat, where Cereza will use her kind of limited magical skills to detain or otherwise slow down an enemy, while Cheshire will go in basically full brawler mode and beat the snout out of them. And you have to do all of that at the same time with the two sticks, managing both characters. And that is the point that I'm losing it a little bit with Bayonetta, because it never feels good. It never feels right. No. I always feel overwhelmed. I always feel like I've got one character kind of like walking into the perimeter,
not keeping an eye on them, and they're like
they wander somewhere off. Yeah, exactly. I want it to a degree. I want it to have kind of first person or third person control. So I still kind of move my thumbs that way, but usually that involves Bayonetta like stuck in a corner somewhere behind a bush while Cheshire is beating the hell out of some other dude, because I can't focus on more than one thing at a time, apparently, in a video game.
Can you just park one of them in the corner and control the other one?
There are moments in the game where you can kind of do that safely. The thing that becomes frustrating, though, is if you park, it's usually Bayonetta that you park. If you park her for a little too long, other enemies will come beat her up. And then you have to stop Cheshire from doing what he's doing with the other stick and bring him over to rescue her. And and the whole problem
just take turns.
Starts again.
You can't like tag in and out. Like, okay, so now Bayonetta's in trouble, so Cheshire he can take a timeout for a little bit, or she, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that throughout the course of the game, and some of that's fine. But it is the stuff that I think the developers are like, oh, it'll be cool. You'll control two characters at once. That it's just not working for me. It has been a bit of a slog to make me kind of go back to this and keep trying to sort of like just make this control feel okay. Just feel like I'm like not constantly walking into a corner while I'm supposed to be doing something. There are periods of the game where you can turn Cheshire back into the little doll and you just carry him around with you, and that feels great. But it's usually like Bayonetta walking around and talking to people and exploring. There are some light puzzling you can do with him sort of still in doll mode, which is kind of fun. But as soon as it pops back out and you have two full-bodied characters that you have to navigate around at the same time, I'm completely at odds with this game. I don't know what I'm doing, and it never feels great.
You play this for more than 90 minutes?
I've played this for quite a bit more than 90 minutes. Yeah. It is a really long game. How long to beat says it's like 12 hours long. I'm probably halfway through, and I'm still like rusty as shit with it. Like, I still don't feel like, man, you would think halfway through this game, I would feel a little more kind of in tune with the controls. And I don't.
That's tough. I can't think of too many games where, like, that I've played where I'm controlling two different characters doing separate things. I think it reminds me a lot of The World Ends With You on the DS, because there were like two characters, or there was one character on each screen, and they were kind of doing different things. And what I liked about that is that, like, first of all, one of the characters was just way, way less involved than the other one, so it was a little more manageable to play both of them at once.
Yeah. But
also, you didn't really have to. Like, the second character would just sort of auto-play in kind of a, not quite optimal way if you didn't feel like controlling them.
Oh, interesting.
Which was a nice option. But like, once your brain mutated to the point where it could handle dealing with both these characters at once, it was quite amazing, actually. And I was just like, oh, I didn't think I would ever get to this point where I can even comprehend what is going on 2 screens at once, but somehow they made it work.
Yeah.
It did take quite a while to get to that point, though.
Yeah, I think, I've certainly played enough, like, single-player co-op games in my past that and it's never quite sort of defied me as much as Cereza and the Lost Demon sort of seems to, in that there are enough video games I could think of, where you just sort of tap a shoulder button and it allows you to switch control over to the other character, and you're able to sort of solve puzzles or climb things or, whatever that way. I just don't understand why the design decision was made for you to directly control both of them at the same time. And it doesn't feel elegant ever. Again, I'm willing to concede that maybe it's me. But as I've read other sort of reviews for this, it doesn't seem like other reviewers are having the problem that I'm having. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm the problem here. I'm the problem. It's me. But yeah, no, it doesn't feel great. And I feel like there's enough things that could have been done from a design standpoint that could have prevented this for me. But clearly the developer had some other thing in mind here.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's not sort of like, an AI helper mode or something.
Yeah.
To sort of just like ease you into controlling both characters at once. Like maybe they're not like fighting demons if you're not controlling one of them, but they'll try their best to stay out of their way or not get in trouble.
Yeah. Or make it a real co-op game where another person has to control Cheshire while I control Bayonetta.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask if that's not even an option at all.
I'm not aware of it being an option. I don't think it's a 2-player game at all. I think it is just a single-player.
Ooh, it could be
experience.
One of those single controller co-op games. You ever play one of those?
That's what it feels like I am playing. But what do you have in mind? What do you mean?
Oh, there was this game called Adventures of Cookie and Cream for the PlayStation 2. And you would have these 2 different characters, or 2 separate characters on different sides of the screen. And it was kind of the same deal where you control one of them using each analog stick and like the shoulder buttons.
Yeah.
And there was an option to, I guess they couldn't really enforce this, but they suggested that you play it with 2 people holding one side of the controller. And I tried that, and it led to a lot of arguments. But it's kind of a fun little, I don't know, not quite a party game with just 2 people.
Experiment.
Like
yeah.
That's so I mean,
I've never heard of that.
You could potentially do that. I don't know if that would make it a better experience.
It would be a better experience for me with this game if someone else could control one of these characters.
Yeah, well, wait. Well, you have the Joy-Cons. Why don't you just give Sarah the other Joy-Con or something, and she can take care of it?
I mean, that's true. That is a feature of the Switch. This is a Switch-only game.
Yeah.
Could you just detach one of the Joy-Cons and let somebody else be the left side of the controller while I'm the right side of the controller?
Yeah.
I had not thought of that, and now I feel dumb.
Well, I don't know. It didn't occur to me until just a minute ago.
All right. Well, how soon can you get to Pennsylvania?
Well, I'll be right over.
All right. So it's a weird blessing here in that, like, I think I've aged out a little bit of the mainline Bayonetta games. I really liked the first one. It was a lot of fun. That's one of those games that, for me, was best enjoyed on baby mode, where I could just steamroll through it. I didn't have to learn combos. I could just be weird and do crazy stunts and kill weird monsters. And it was satisfying. This is a very different game. This is not that kind of game at all. This definitely feels more like you said, kind of a cozy witch game sometimes with occasional little bits of combat. The animation is gorgeous. The sort of visual style is very kind of soft-hued and elaborate artwork. Everything's done as sort of like a storybook presentation. So as you transition from scene to scene, like the whole screen just sort of turns like a page almost. It's really cool. A lot of sort of love went into the art design on this thing. I just can't wrap my brain around controlling it properly for some of these more intense boss battles.
Yeah, I really like the look of it. That's probably the most sort of enticing thing to me, because I was like, I don't know if I'm into Bayonetta enough where I need that to be the character this is based around.
Yeah.
I kind of like that it's, she's back in her little, like, witch apprentice days or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna get me like with that angle.
Yeah, they certainly got me with that. It was cute enough looking that I was like, I'll give this a whirl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't want to give people the wrong impression that it's not wall-to-wall combat. It is probably 75% exploration and puzzle solving and 25% combat. So it really is just about a quarter of the game that I find frustrating. But it's enough that it has been a point of contention for me, and it has made it harder for me to go back to this thing when I could just, I don't know, play other things with less friction.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah. Super cute, though. Soundtrack's really good. I like the music quite a lot. That'll come up at the end of the year, definitely.
Oh, cool. Maybe I'll give it a listen.
But that's Bayonetta Origins, Cereza, and the Lost Demon. Buyer beware. If you're old like me and have trouble doing two things at the same time, this might not be the game for you.
Mm-hmm. This is only on Switch currently.
It is only a Switch game, correct? Yeah.
Does Nintendo still have like some weird exclusivity thing with Bayonetta? I don't remember if that did Bayonetta 3 come out on anything besides Switch?
I believe it is only Switch so far.
Yeah. Oh, I totally forgotten about that. That's so random.
I mean, that wasn't even that long ago. It's crazy how quick the Bayonetta factory is working, because it took a long time for 3 to come out.
Yeah.
And then that was October of last year, right? So 6 months. It's been about 6 months since Bayonetta 3, and here we have the Bayonetta Origins. So
I'm sure it's not the same team that they finished Bayonetta 3 and went to work directly on this, right? It's probably some other group within Sega.
Oh, I'm sure.
Whoever.
Yeah, they would have had to have been sort of in development simultaneously, right?
I would think
so.
But
it's Platinum though. It's still the same developer.
Yeah.
So cool. She's an interesting character. She's certainly an outlier, kind of in the world of cute and fuzzy bunnies over at Nintendo. So it's weird. True. It's weird that she has become so synonymous with the land of Mario and Kirby.
That's so weird that that's not really how I think of her. You're very much as like a Sega thing, but I guess that is where she ended up. It's weird.
Yeah. And that's it. That's all I've been playing this week.
Oh, that's a lot of stuff.
That's a lie, because I'm still looking for moons in Mario, which DJ and I talked about before we pushed record tonight.
Yeah, oh man, I don't know if you even told everybody. I mean, you mentioned it a couple weeks ago, but at some point you're going to have to get an update on air about this moon endeavor.
Yeah, we'll have to dig a little deeper maybe in the start of next week's show before we get into the rest of the craziness.
Yeah, all right.
Cool.
Randy's been doing some crazy stuff behind the scenes you wouldn't even believe.
You're setting those expectations real high, DJ. I'm feeling kind of self-conscious now.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to join us on Discord. You can hang out with us and chat about video games and other fun pop culture things. You can get a link to that at VGHangover.com. And it would help us out immensely if you would subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcasting app of choice. Maybe help us out by telling your friends about the show too.
Yeah, that would be great. Really helps us get the word out, attract new listeners. We appreciate that a lot. Speaking of who we appreciate a lot, I'm going to give thanks again to Carl Brueggemann this week for our intro and outro music. You can go to carlbmusic.bandcamp.com, check out those full tracks, and maybe download an album or two.
Nice. We'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is TJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.